How's it going, folks? Welcome back to another episode of Mentor Moments. My name is Brayton Wooters, one of your co-hosts, alongside Dr. Michael Kiener. On Mentor Moments, we take the time to interview counseling professionals and personal mentors. As you know, this season we've been chatting a lot about leadership, technology, career development, and counseling as a profession. In this special episode, we have Emily Westfall with us. Emily is a substance use and mental health therapist for Jasper County, Illinois, and our first ever rodeo athlete guest. We hope you enjoy this episode of Mentor Moments and keep tuning in.
I'm ready. Are we ready? Are we feeling
good?
You wanna jump with the first question today?
Yeah, I can go first.
Professional journey though. Where do I even start? I have a big professional journey.
Well, whatever you want the listeners to know.
Well, then whatever feels most important to you, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, this is gonna be long-winded. I'm sorry.
We're ready for it. So, I mean, feel wherever you feel like is appropriate to begin. But Emily, tell us a little bit about that professional journey. How did you start? What were those kinds of experiences that shaped your life?
Oh, so that is a big question for a very long answer. Let's bring it all the way back. So I came from a very rural background. So my family is, I can't remember, but either 6th or 7th generation farmers in South Central Illinois. So that is the background I grew up in. That's the background I was always a part of. And I always assumed I would stay in that demographic. So I went to college for my bachelor's degree, and I got my bachelor's of science in animal science. While I was there, I competed on their rodeo team. Absolutely loved it. Learned a lot about veterinary medicine, all things agriculture, soil science, biology, and of course, I took a few psychology classes. After graduating, I competed for the Miss Rodeo Illinois pageant, and I was blessed with the opportunity to be named Miss Rodeo Illinois 2017. As Miss Rodeo Illinois, I traveled, I think, approximately 50,000 miles across the country promoting the state of Illinois, the Western lifestyle, and rodeo. While I was doing that, I got to see and meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people about different cultural backgrounds, issues, which involved mental health issues. And I was starting to kind of see different issues that were coming up and kind of wondering why these weren't talked about more in the Western world, in the rural population, because these are things I was never really talked about when I was growing up. So what did I do after that? So after that, I got a job at a veterinary clinic, and that is where I really got to see the mental health side of veterinary medicine and agriculture to a T. So I don't know if you know, there's a huge, I forget what the statistic is, but veterinarians are one of the top suicidal professions. And that is because that job is so hard. And one of the things I kept thinking of is why don't we have more professionals that know about this lifestyle? Because a lot of the mental health professionals I was seeing, they didn't have a lot of communication with rural America or veterinary medicine or that background. And that's nothing against them. That's just not the background they were a part of. And so that's kind of where I started to get my idea that I wanted to go back to school. Another kind of thought I had, I got hurt rodeoing a few years ago. I think it was my knee. And it made me realize that, one, what do we do as rodeo athletes when we get hurt? How do we overcome that? What are those mental struggles like? And who is there to help and support us? So that got me really looking into the rehabilitation program that Maryville had to offer. So I applied, was accepted, loved the program. Good job, Dr. Kiener. And then I did some of my internships. I did one at Provident Behavioral Health at the suicide hotline because, one, I wanted more of that experience because I had friends that I knew in the veterinary field that were suicidal, friends that I knew in the military field that were suicidal, and kind of wanted more experience to know how to help them. And then I did my second internship at the Brain Injury Foundation, and the people there, my supervisors, fantastic humans. And I did that one to learn more about how brain injury, rehabilitating from brain injury, you can work because, as you know, rodeo professionals, we get hurt and a lot of times we get brain injuries. And not a lot of people know how detrimental those brain injuries can be or how to, overcome and work through the brain injury. And so both of those internships were fantastic as I now work for the Jasper County Health Department, which is a job I got after graduating. I am a mental health and substance use counselor. It is community mental health, fantastic workplace, very close to all of my coworkers, which is very much needed in the type of work we do. So I think we're the only mental health professionals in the county. So we kind of provide help to all of them for all of the things. I think that kind of wraps it up. That's where I'm at now.
It's so, I guess it's refreshing to, again, to connect with graduates and to see their journey and I guess see how they are embracing their degree and their passions and sort of pre-grad school with post-grad school. Again, from a career development perspective, I guess I see planned happenstance, right? That you can plan so much for your career and then all these, I don't say chance events, but like, okay, this is growing up in this area, this is my culture, this is my experience that leads me to this way. Then you see sort of a need there, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the mental health and the veterinary services, and then again combining your passion for rodeo, and then again combining that with the need there, and then just really seeing how strategic you were or purposeful in selecting practicum and internships to then, again, as you said, kind of go back to the community that you are now to give back. So that's awesome.
Emily, the way that you describe your story is very interesting because the way that you described it was like, I noticed this thing and I did it. And I'm wondering, would you describe would you describe yourself as somebody that just goes and does stuff?
That's basically how it is. It's kind of one of those questions, like every interview, it's like, what's your greatest weakness? I'm impulsive. But that's also a fantastic thing in the idea that, so a month ago, I was asked to speak at a SAMHSA town hall meeting. Without even thinking about it, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, like, let's do it. Send me like what you want me to talk about. And he was like, Caleb was like, are you sure? And I was like, absolutely, Beth, you got this. So it comes to that day and it's like 115 people are showing up on this call and they're like, this government official office is here and this government look, someone from the White House. And I was like, is this a big deal? And so like I've gotten really cool experiences because I do say yes. And I do always, make sure I'm, set my boundaries. But yeah, I'm kind of impulsive whenever it comes to like, I have this big idea, let's do it. What's going to stop me? And it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, then I can say I tried.
Well, I think it's interesting that when you use that as the job interview and they say, what's something you want to improve? And you say, well, you're impulsive. But again, to me, you're using that as a strength, like there is some courageousness in saying, yes, let's do it, so maybe that's the, same side of the coin there. But well, so besides being impulsive or being a risk taker, you see any other qualities or attributes that make up somebody that's an effective professional?
One compliment I got actually from one of my clients a few months ago, and it was actually during his discharge. And he is a client that has been through substance use professionals left and right. And one thing he said to me was that I was the first person that he felt that he told his entire story to, and he never at one point felt judged. And I was like it didn't even cross my mind that anything you said was weird. And he was like, I could talk about my cocaine use or whatever I was doing, and you were just like, okay, what next?
What do you think chalked that up? Like, how did you cultivate that? How? Yeah, like was that just a natural? You think that was just sort of natural?
Yeah, maybe, probably. Just like a natural way of
of being.
And to hear that from a client too, not just from our professors or from like our other or from a friend, right? Sometimes we'll hear that from a friend. They'll say like, "Oh, you're such a good listener," but to hear that from the people that we're serving, it
hits a little differently.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so, the way that you have described your role as it is now, you're serving this role in many different places. You might be having to wear multiple hats in one day. How do you monitor yourself? How do you keep yourself, from getting burnt out?
I love my coworkers. That, really, that's probably the biggest thing of if I have a hard client, I can go up to the reception and be like, we gotta move some people, and they, no questions asked, we'll switch people around. And all of my clients have always been wonderful. Like if I have a crisis or something, they are like, oh no, like if that was me, I would want her to spend the time with me, like no problem whatsoever. So they are integral to my mental health. And then just any of the other therapists that I work with, the case managers or my supervisor, of like, if something happens, that I can just go to their office and be like, hey, I'm gonna sit here for a while because I need out of mind. And I'm gonna just hang out or play with one of your games or read a book in the corner. Just ignore me. Day to day, they are by far my biggest support and how I stay sane.
I think that can't be, we need to focus on that more. I know like at school, I know we've probably talked about, when you're interviewing at a place, to ask about the office culture and whatnot. And maybe that's hard to really assess in an interview, but that, as you're saying, that really is key there, that there is this supportive environment or a culture of support. I don't know. I just want to, so all our listeners out there, to sort of really kind of think about how you can cultivate those work relationships. You also already mentioned rodeo, so I guess I was expecting you to talk about rodeo or like this. Again, you're being an athlete and being on the circuit and taking care of your horses and again striving to be the best when you perform. So I don't know. You want to chat a little bit what you gain from rodeo?
Yeah, so that's like my out of office self-care. And it's really kind of cool. And I had one of my coworkers was joking of like, you have a full-time job outside of your full-time job with rodeo and horses, and I basically do. And it's kind of fantastic in the way that they are two very separate worlds, but they also intermix, because rodeo, you have to be very on mentally. And it's starting to come into play more, and a lot of rodeo athletes are becoming more aware of the mental side of rodeo performance, because when we're rodeoing, so breakaway rope is one of the things I do. So I have my horse, we're in a little box, and it's just me, my horse, and a calf. And I have generally roughly anywhere between like 2 and 6 seconds that I catch this calf. And so if there's any mental play, I have to be very cognizant of what is happening in that moment. And so it's still hard mentally, but it also is refreshing in the sense that this is something that I'm concentrating on for me. And as a very competitive person, I love to just be the best that I can be and outperform myself. The one thing I love about rodeo is that we're all very much a family. And so just like my work family is important, my rodeo family is important. Did that answer your question? Do you want more about rodeo?
No, I can tell Brayton's got this great follow-up question. That's awesome. I mean, again, I will let Brayton, I have a comment, but I'll let Brayton go. I think.
Well, I've got multiple questions. I don't know which one to ask, I suppose. So Dr. Kiener, if you have a comment or thought, go ahead.
I guess my first thought was just a parallel of, again, for you having like wherever you're invested, you see those people as family,
Yes.
right? And it's sort of, again, that connection. And maybe I'm hearing that because that's I always felt connected to, the work family is just as much as the home family or the wrestling family or the MRA family, that those people are meaningful. And that's a big reason why I invest in things, because of those personal relationships and being connected. And I also liked when I was hearing this, like, again, as you said, it's very similar, but it's also distinct, like it's a different way of mental energy when you're preparing for rodeo versus preparing for a client. But I also know your competitiveness, that you use the same thing to, again, be a good student, to be a good employee, to be a good athlete, like that. There's some of those traits. So that's what I was sort of thinking. So
I will say, on the competitiveness side, though, my horse, Clark, is 10 times more competitive than I will ever be. And so he runs the show when we're at a rodeo or a barrel race or whatever. He is in charge, and he knows it, and he loves it.
As somebody who, I don't think I've ever, I don't know if I ever told you this, Emily, but like, I am kind of afraid of horses. I don't know if I ever told you that, or I might have just been like too afraid to tell you. I was like, oh, I'll just like save that for another time, and I'll just unearth that later. But
Time.
yeah, now's the time, right? While we're live on the air, is to let you know that like horses kind of scare me. So they're just so smart, and I'm like almost too smart, like what are you plotting against me?
Clark breaks out of his stall.
How? Like,
he plays with the chain enough that it'll come unlatched, and then he'll play with the chain so it comes unlatched from the other latch, because you have to triple latch his gate, otherwise he'll break out. And then if he breaks out, he'll go to another horse's stall to try to help them get out.
yeah.
Or he will go to the feed bin to try. So we have, like, if you walk into our barn, literally everything has like 6 latches. And that's because Clark and then our other horse, Bay, they know how to get out, and then they know how to get into the feed. And so a lot of times if they get out of their stalls, they go straight to the feed because they know where the feed's at. And they'll like just sit there and play with the lid, trying to get it to come unlatched. And it's a great time. They are very smart. They all have their own personalities.
As somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about the rodeo scene, about what do people need to know, you think, about rodeo? You've already mentioned like mental health. Is there anything else that the everyday kind of Joe like me should know?
I think there's so much. And I think that just goes back to the entire Western world. I think there was a study, and I studied this during my bachelor's. Who knows the statistic now, but it was like the average American is 3 generations removed from agriculture. And that astonished me, because I grew up on a farm. My blackberries come from the woods. I didn't know you bought blackberries from a store. I didn't know people didn't make their own spaghetti sauce. I didn't know people didn't make their own bread. Like, those were normal things. And so coming to grad school in the city, I was like, y'all just go to the grocery store for all this. This is kind of cool. But then I would like talk to people at my internships. And so I think beyond rodeo, just anyone, average American, talk to a farmer, talk to a rancher, and find out our lifestyle, because that's the other cool thing about rodeo is we come from all walks of life. I know dental hygienists, I know doctors, I know veterinarians, chiropractors, anyone and everybody. And then we all have like, our hobby is we rodeo, and we love to rodeo. But then I also know people that grew up on ranches, and they are your generic cowboy ranchers, and they professionally rodeo too. I guess in essence, that's the biggest thing of we are normal people. We're normal people that like to hang out with 1,000-pound animals that are kind of like our dogs.
I love that. That makes me feel better, right? I mean, that sounds like so inclusive to a degree. Like, that's where my brain goes. Dr. Kiener, are you thinking, what are your thoughts?
It's just like, yeah, being inclusive, or just being open-minded, that again, whatever stereotypes or perceptions that we have, if we don't take the time to sort of get to know that person or where they came from, that we are going to, again, have those misconceptions. I know I say this all the time. My father had his own business, and a similar moment growing up, I thought every parents ran their own business. So I didn't understand that other people work for other people. right? Like, again, just, oh, okay. So again, I kind of giggled when you're talking about, oh, people buy Blackberries? Oh, okay. Oh, that's not just the phone. You're actually, anyways. Well, I wonder, Emily, like, obviously we're in a world that's always kind of changing. How do you like be adaptive as a professional? I mean, you were just, before we started, I know this is really being adaptive. You were telling me some of the uniqueness of doing community mental health in a very rural area. So, maybe address that, or how you stay sort of up to date.
Yeah. So one, being a community mental health professional is hard, because we are generally it, for our communities. We are their resource in all things mental health. They come to us, and sometimes we have really great answers and we're like, yes, we can help you with that. And other times it's like, we're going to try together to figure out where we can call to find this help. I think the biggest thing to stay adaptive, from what I've seen, we've started implementing like a lot of trainings. One of the really cool trainings that I just did in August was for CETA Global, and that's the Common Elements Treatment Approach. So Dr. Laura Murray created this. Dr. Caleb, and I would ruin his last name if I have to say it out loud. Sorry, Caleb. So it's a fantastic approach that takes your very common elements and puts it into this program designed for rural communities where you need to get the most out of treatment in a short amount of time. One of the things I was talking to Dr. Kiener before, we have, I think, roughly 80 people on our wait list right now, an extreme amount of people. And so in order to try to help as many people, we've tried to implement this approach. And I knew it would work because I knew these elements already worked. I already implemented cognitive reframing, cognitive restructuring, exposure, like I already knew about those. And it was kind of amazing because I saw results. And so here I am 8 sessions later with a client, and I'm like, huh, you have improved. You can, like, you're ready for discharge now. And it was before, 8 sessions later, you're like, all right, let's keep working. And so being able to not only get clients in, get them through treatment, but to see that drastic of improvement has been incredible. And so I think just learning and keeping an open mind to different elements, different approaches, different ideas, that is the biggest thing to just being a dynamic professional.
I want to get my words right before I speak. The culture, I think, of therapy or mental health has been, I think, very long-term. I've been coached, I suppose, whenever I first started becoming a therapist, is just to go slow. Take it slow. Don't expect results immediately, because that is, very much our culture. We want results. We want to see them now. And to find an approach, it sounds like that you've found, that can get you results and can get from A to B in a quicker way. We kind of cherish those moments. And it sounds like that's kind of something that you found.
Well, yeah, that mindset, like if we only have 2 weeks, well, let's get to work in 2 weeks, again, like, or 8 weeks or 6, or there 2 months, whatever that time is. But again, it being time limited, we sort of, maybe that puts a different paradigm on our work.
Well, and it's really nice. I found, like, for just my clients that I deal with, like DCFS or court, I have a lot of court order people, or even like my mandated 20 hours of DUI counseling, of being able to show them, this is where because you start with an assessment, as like the CETA's assessment, and then each session you do the same assessment, and you can see their progress overall through these same questions, and obviously by the client's self-assessment as well. And so it's really cool to see that progress and to be able to relay that in a specific way for court, for DCFS, for all of those outside agencies, has been very helpful on my part for like the case management side of things, to be able, like, when they question me, to be able to be like, oh, hey, like, according to this assessment, if you look back at these numbers, you can see the improvement.
I love that, because sometimes the improvement looks obvious to us, and then having to relay it to a third party is difficult. I feel that with my parents, with the kids that I work with sometimes. So I totally understand that. Shifting gears a little bit, the name of the podcast, Mentor Moments. Do you have any, or have had any mentors, role models that made a significant impact on your journey?
So I thought about this, and I've had so many good mentors, and it's so hard to just pick one moment, because every supervisor, every professor, every teacher, I think I've learned something from. But I keep going back to my very first internship, which wasn't counseling related at all. It was actually at a equine boarding facility, an equine training facility. So I trained horses. My boss, Lori Nelson, one of the things she told me, one of the very first things she told me with the first horse we were working on was, you are going to listen to me. You're going to read books from other professionals. You're going to watch videos from other professionals. And I want you to take something from each of them and keep an open mind and know that one way is not the only way. And I think that has stuck with me, not only with my horse riding, not only with rodeo, but in every aspect of my life, of that I'm going to take a little bit from everybody. I'm not going to be stuck on this. I'm not going to be stuck on that. I'm just going to kind of absorb everything. And there's going to be parts of this that I really love, and there's going to be parts of that I really love. And I can combine that to be who I want to be, as a horse trainer, as a therapist, as a counselor, or whatever that is. So I guess out of everything, I keep going back to that moment in the round pen when I was working with Laura 10 odd years ago.
It's great that you've had such a significant moment, right? That you keep going back to and using it as a guidepost. So I guess I would then say, we're allowing you then to share your mentor moment. So what do you have an additional thought to give our listeners that they can sort of chew on or have some kind of homework?
Be open-minded, and don't be afraid to tell yourself yes to the moments where you're questioning yourself, where you're questioning whether or not you can do it. Because at the end of the day, if I constantly question myself, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So by telling myself I can possibly do that, or I should just try, I've gotten to where I am. Give yourself the opportunity to say yes.
Emily, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing, parts of your life with us and with our listeners. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Mentor Moments. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere that you're listening to this podcast. Be sure to follow us at Mentor Moments on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And we will see you on the next episode of Mentor Moments.
Are you ready for a career that makes a difference in your community? Consider becoming a counselor with Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation.
Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor helps people who have disabilities find a career path that helps to use their strengths. When people have the supports that they need, it makes anything possible.
I am proud that I'm able to help people change their life and reach for their dream goals.
Discover the change you can make. Visit mvr.mo.gov to get started.